Israel has not been abducted by the settlers. Israel has been using the settlers as part of its project of controlling the West Bank and the Gaza previously, that is the Palestinian territories occupied in 1967. And number two, we cannot say that the Palestinian decision has been abducted by Hamas. I mean, this is a completely wrong symmetry. Hamas was at odds with the Palestinian leadership and is still at odds, very much at odds with the Palestinian, the PLO leadership. The PLO evolution from after, the time of the first Intifada, the Algiers National Council, Palestinian National Council, up to Oslo and the rest was one of concession after concession after concession to the Israeli side. How can you say that it was abducted by Hamas? It's completely wrong. The fact is that you have had Israelis, you have had, the kind of leadership on the other side that any conqueror would dream of. And yet, you have just spat on it. You have just ignored and just despised it in the most terrible manner. So that's the fact. And as long as we don't acknowledge this big difference, as long as we don't acknowledge the colonial character of this situation, we can't move forward. And there is no symmetry because, Abraham, let me tell you, if you tell me that the Israeli soldier attacking Lebanon is absolutely atheistic like I am, and he is fighting Hezbollah, with whom I have big disagreements when it comes to ideological views or Weltanschauung, for instance, I'm sorry, I would be on the side of Hezbollah against the Israeli soldier because this is not a matter of secularism versus religion, it's a matter of occupation, of colonial oppression, of occupation aggression against a country. And Hezbollah, whatever their ideology, are in the position of those who are defending their homeland, their country. That's the key point. Now, coming to Meron Benvenisti's view of the problem, I have big problems here again with the way this has been presented. The starting point is what is on the West Bank is irreversible. And this is what I mentioned in my presentation. And what is irreversible about that? Well, the number of settlers and can we divide the water? I mean, it's exactly as if someone in France in 1960 would have said, colonization of Algeria is irreversible because there are 10 times more settlers, European settlers in Algeria than whatever you have on the West Bank. And they have been there for 130 years, not since 67. And how could we divide oil? Hey, you divide oil. Is it your property? Is the water in the West Bank property of Israel to be divided between Israel and the Palestinians? No, I mean, it doesn't work like that. There's a problem when you say it's a binational entity, you are presenting a view of things which doesn't work. Does anybody say that South Africa under apartheid was a binational state? Have you ever heard any characterization of South Africa under apartheid as a binational state? A binational state, a binational entity is one where you have an equality between two national entities in a federative or whatever kind of manner. The word that I have not heard is colonial. It is not a binational situation. It's a settler colonial state. Israel is a settler colonial state. It has been so from the beginning, and it is even more so since 1967 in the occupied territories. Now the Palestinians have agreed on reaching a compromise over their own rights as a colonized population facing a settler colonial project. But you can't overlook that and call that just a de facto binational state controlled by one side. Now, I would like to hear, what do you mean by a binational solution? Would you agree that Palestine in the, let's say, British mandate borders, and including Gaza, therefore, should be turned into a binational state, open to all the Palestinian refugees to come back there and live there, Would you agree with this kind of solution? I would like to hear it. I don't know. I don't know how do you deal with the refugees, the diaspora, as you say. How do you deal with that? I would like to hear your point on that. But the key issue is, once one get out of this, what I would consider to be a fake binational framework of what exists now. I'm not speaking of the future. If you have a binational utopia in the future, why not? Edward Said was for that. Many people are for that. But a completely different one than saying that what we have now is a binational state. If we characterize it as it should be, as a colonial situation, then the issue is not binational, because when you made this kind of proposal, the Palestinian will hear it as a colonial diktat that you are trying to get forward. You are trying to keep the whole territories and not giving, that would even be less than Moshe Arendt's wanting to give citizenship to the Palestinians, because there you are just excluding them into this so-called national entity. So if we acknowledge the colonial character of the situation, then another word that has been missing should come into the equation: self-determination. It is not up to you, neither nor to me, to decide what the Palestinians should have. We know what the Palestinians want. We know that there is a consensus among the Palestinians. There has been the prisoners' document and its elaboration by the Palestinians. And this is the closest you can have for a Palestinian consensus on Palestinian fundamental rights. And what does it say? Evacuation of the Israeli army, dismantling of the wall, the evacuation of the settlements, and self-determination in the West Bank and Gaza. That's what the Palestinians have been asking for. And therefore, if we are serious about wanting to overcome the tragic situation in which we are in the country, the first thing to do is like the French did when they had some enlightened government: give self-determination to the Palestinians. Thank you.
If you want to reflect on